It's another Friday, so that means it's time for another Friday the 13th, with the one where Jason finally realizes his dreams of becoming a hockey goalie and dons the iconic mask. Friday the 13th, Part 3 is brought to us once again by director Steve Miner and stars Dana Kimmel and Paul Krakta. Coming out a little over a year after Part 2, Part 3 actually only takes place one day after Part 2. And yes, this is the one where Jason finally gets his iconic hockey mask. If you haven't seen this movie, you might be thinking it's kind of an iconic moment or something, but not really. There's not a whole lot of fanfare about it. He just finds the mask and puts it on. That's really about it. I don't really think when they did it, they were meaning for it to be a long-term thing. The whole hockey mask thing just kind of stuck. But I'm getting ahead of myself. We once again have a group of young people at Crystal Lake that are going to be slaughtered one by Jason. And slaughter he does. The violence and gore in this one is cranked up a bit from the last one, much like it did from the first one. But also like the first two films, the violence and gore here isn't quite to those crazy creative levels that we will get later in the series. In fact, the next movie is when a lot of that shit starts. One thing that definitely is cranked up here is the intensity, and that is one of the things that definitely saves this movie. Because let's be real, the first half to 2/3 of this film is a lot like the previous two. Yeah, there are a bit more creative kills this time around, but it is more or less more the same. We do have a really cheesy 80s biker gang that is inserted into the story at one point for Jason to take out as well, but beyond that, this is a lot like the previous two. Until the final third. That is when the intensity really gets cranked up, and that is when this movie really sees its potential. Now, while I really like the first Friday the 13th, and I even enjoy the second one, intensity has never really been its forte up to this point. Sure, there are murders that happen, there's someone out there stalking people, but I never really felt like it was real tense moments. There's a couple of them, especially in Part 2, but not really a lot. It was more like that old school horror. About the last quarter to third of the movie is Dana Kimmel's character Chris running from Jason, but that shit is legit. This part of the film was the best part. It was super intense. You really felt it. She's running, they're getting into skirmishes, people are getting thrown through windows, getting stabbed and hit. She actually fights back realistically. The music, the way it's shot, and just how creative they get with this whole chase in this last third of the flick is really entertaining. Now, that being said, the way that Jason goes down, if you will, in this one is a bit of a letdown. It's kind of limp noodle. It just kind of happens and you're like, oh, well, I was hoping for a little bit more. However, what they do next is pretty awesome. They absolutely play into that one more scare thing that the previous two movies were known for. In the first one, we had young Jason pop out and grab the girl and pull her under. In the second one, we had Jason come through the window and grab the girl and pull her out. So as soon as our character Chris gets in a boat on the lake and just goes out there, you know something's coming out of that fucking water to get her. And they have so many psych outs in this moment. Like, she runs into some like trees in the water and it kind of scares her for a minute. A bird comes flying out of nowhere. And even at one point, Jason himself gets up on shore and starts coming after her. You kind of forget about the whole thing because the intensity just ratchets up. And as soon as you do forget about it, bam, out of the water comes Pamela Voorhees, decrepit, nasty, zombie looking self with like worms and shit coming out of her face and all that. She's all kind of fucked up. I don't know why she still has her head, but whatever. She grabs the girl and takes her under. It was a great fake out, and I loved how they played with the audience. They knew that we were expecting it, and they went with it. They didn't just give us a cheap jump scare that we saw coming. They gave us a cheap jump scare, yes, but they fucked with us a little bit to where we were kind of like, okay, maybe they're not gonna do it. Oh, god damn it, they did it. Oh shit, what the fuck is coming out of her face? It was a really good time, and it does kind of signify where this series is going. The series at some point is going to stop trying to be so serious and kind of have fun with itself. And this is the beginnings of that. Yes, it's still scary, but it's that kind of scary where you scream and then you all laugh together. It's not that kind of scary that keeps you up all night and makes you fucking piss the bed or something. No, it's that fun kind of scary. Now, based on everything I've said so far, if you haven't guessed, the narrative here isn't really that much of a deviation from what we've already gotten in this series. You got a bunch of people at the lake, Jason shows up, kill it. And if it wasn't for how good the final third of this movie is, I would would say that, it's starting to wear pretty thin. But that final third absolutely keeps things in line. So when they really increased the intensity and just had a really good time in this final third, it was a breath of fresh air. Now, there is something else that I really did like about this movie, and it was that Jason wasn't just an unstoppable killing machine. In the final act of the film, Dana Kimmel's character actually fights back and gets some really good hits on him, even stabs him a couple of times, and he shows that, holy fuck, that hurts, you just stabbed me in the leg or the hand or whatever. He's a lot less supernatural here, and by less, I mean he's not supernatural at all. He's just a guy. He's fucking crazy, but he is a guy. And especially knowing where the series ends up, that was pretty neat. It was nice to see that somebody could stand up to him. I mean, he's still a fucking juggernaut badass, don't get me wrong, but at least he's not like unstoppable. Now, performance-wise, we are starting to move into what we expect from a Friday the 13th flick at this point. Now, I mean, none of them are like terrible performances, but none of them are great either. They're fine for what they are. And honestly, part of that might be the characters. The vast majority of the characters in this movie are pretty damn shallow, so I'm sure there's only so much the actors could do with that material. But given what performances we do have here, they're all fine. They serve their purpose, and as far as a Friday the 13th flick goes, nobody really stands out above anybody else or anything. They're just all fine. Now, something you absolutely will notice about this movie is that it has a whole lot of weird shots of stuff coming out at the camera. And the reason for that, if you didn't know, but you probably already guessed, is that this movie was originally played in 3D. That's right, it played into the whole 80s trope of having a third installment of a movie and just adding D after the 3. Just like Amityville, Jaws, etc, etc, etc. On a side note, the excellent Blu-ray box set that Scream Factory offers that has all the movies in it actually offers this movie with active shutter 3D, aka the new kind of 3D. Unfortunately, my 3D TV bit the dust quite a few years ago and the TV I have now doesn't support it, but if you do have a 3D TV, from what I hear, this 3D Blu-ray is actually pretty good. However, without the 3D, much like it is watching other 3D movies of the time that use the gimmick for just shit coming out at the screen, it is a bit of an odd watch at times. A lot of these scenes stick out a lot more when they're not in 3D. It's clear that, oh yeah, that's why they did this. They like stick something towards the screen and kind of hold it there for a minute, kind of awkwardly. Yeah, that was for the 3D effect. Because back then, that's what 3D was. They just wanted to like see as much stuff come out of the screen as they possibly could. Admittedly, it is a bit distracting at times here, although there are actually a couple of shots that are kind of creatively done. I imagine them in 3D and I'm like, hey, you know what? All that other shit, they can keep that, but that was kind of neat. I'd like to see that in 3D. Now, the only other technical aspect of these movies that anybody's really worried about is the blood and gore. How's it look? Well, it definitely looks good here, and it's probably the best in the series so far. I can't say it's so much a leaps and bounds leap from the last movie, but it definitely is a steady progression up from the last movie. Things do look better here. There is more. There's more gore. There's more effects. It is better overall in this film. Overall, actually, all the practical effects look really good. There is one shot where somebody gets shot in the head with a harpoon gun. I mean, the effect is kind of neat, but it does not look that great when you see the clearly a dummy or some type of massive prosthetic on this person's face. It stands out a bit, admittedly. The scene's still pretty cool, though, but it does stand out. Doesn't take away from the film or anything, but yeah, they took it a little bit too far there, showed a little bit too much of it, and it took you out just for a sec. Overall, though, with the exception of just one or two little things here or there, the effects here are all pretty solid, and of course, they are all practical. Now, I did want to talk about one thing that I can't believe I didn't bring up in the previous two reviews I did of Part 1 and Part 2, and that is the music. The iconic music that is in all the Friday the 13th movies is of course here as well, and it is used to good effect. Why the fuck I forgot to talk about the music in the first two films, I'll never know. Honestly, it was probably because in the second movie, there's not really much going on. It's pretty much just the same music from the last movie. And in the first one, yes, you got that iconic theme, but beyond that, while it wasn't like bad or anything, the music in that one it's fine. There's nothing special special about it. Here, they do add a bit more. You, of course, have the iconic Jason theme, but you have some really high-intensity, ratcheted-up music, especially for that final third. The music that they use here isn't like the most creative music ever made, but it is extremely effective. It absolutely added it to the tension levels in the end of the film. It's some really good, classic 80s horror slasher flick music. I still can't fucking believe that at least with the first movie that I didn't bring up the music. The fuck? Guys, at the end of the day, Friday the 13th Part 3 is an improvement over Part 2. It doesn't really live up to the big twist of the first one. There's no twist at all really here, but it's not trying to either. It is really leaning into this whole, okay, Jason's alive, it's not a secret, there's no secret murderer, he's the guy, he's just gonna kill a whole bunch of motherfuckers, and let's get a little creative with it. In 3D. While the first half to 2/3 of the film is very similar to the films that came before it in the series, the final third absolutely makes up for it and brings the whole thing home with a bang. Overall, the film had some decent performances, some good looking special effects, and a banger of a final third. And even though it may not quite live up to the first one in some ways, it is still absolutely worth a rent.
All he wanted was this.
I have to return some videotape.
I had a really good time with Friday the 13th Part 3. I enjoyed this one more than I thought I was going to, especially after watching the first half of the film. So if you're looking for a good Friday the 13th time, especially one that is starting to get a little bit more in line with the Friday the 13th that most people think about when they think of Friday the 13th, then check out Friday the 13th Part 3 or 3D, and I think you'll have a pretty good time for the night. So there it is, guys, my review of Friday the 13th Part 3. If you enjoyed and want more content like this, hit that subscribe button and help my little channel grow. If you want to help out the channel, check out my Patreon in the description below and become a jarhead and get some of the awesome benefits that go along with that, like these guys. And possibly join my top tier and become a bad motherfucker like my man Greg. If you liked what I had to say, give me a like. If not, let me know in the comments below why. And as always, stay sexy, Crystal Lake.
Jason will come to you. Friday the 13th, Part 3 in 3D.
There is a talent that I noticed that Jason has yet to develop in the films up to this point, and that would be his apparent powers of teleportation. In the later movies, I remember the fucker just like never runs. He's just like walking no matter how fast they're running, and he somehow ends up in front of them or next to him or something like that. Not here. You see his ass running around like a fucking psychopath all the time. It's kind of unnerving, and I wonder why they got away from it. But apparently, in the creative process, at some point in time, someone thought that it would just be scarier to show him walking everywhere he goes. I mean, I guess he's got like a bad heart or something. He doesn't want to get too worked up. I don't know, but the motherfucker doesn't run in the later films. It does make you wonder though, where did he get this power of teleportation? Is it from those like 3 little heads that Freddy got his immortality from? Did they like show up at the end of this movie when Jason dies? Like in between movies, is that when they showed up and said, "Hey Jason"? You know, the ones from Freddy's Dead that are flying around that were in 3D? Oh yeah, that movie was in 3D too. But you know, they're like flying around, they're like, "Hey Jason, what do you want? Tell us what you want." And when Freddy was all like, "I want it all," Jason was just like, "Dude, I just got like bad fucking knees. I just don't want to run anymore. Can you make it where I can like teleport to my victims moving forward?" Yeah, I don't know if that's in the canon, but I'm gonna go with that because Freddy and Jason apparently are in the same universe as we find many movies later. So that means these little flying head things, they could be in this universe as well. I'm going with that. That's how he got the fucking teleportation. That's why this motherfucker don't run anymore after this movie. And that is also how I come to those crazy fucking conclusions I have about movies mythos.